Hello and welcome back to the Creators Guild podcast. I am Chris Howell, and with me is
Jared Lovelady.
And we are here to talk about all things creative. So, if you remember last time, we read a little bit more out of our book. And again, if you haven't bought our book, go read it. We're going to spend a lot of time throughout these episodes talking about our book and then moving on and talking about other things creative. But as per usual, we're going to first dive right in. Last time we finished reading chapter 8, which is I Needed a Rest. And today we're going to dive into chapter 9, Unwelcome Guests. Cycle of Aerolith, year 12182. The first of many hardships, like the first paving stone laid in a road, began the journey that would lead us to a new world and awaken our past. Memories of Duradim, Radavant's royal page to the queen. Tuara woke to the sound of birds, one bird in particular, to be more precise. The cawing from a large crow over the more tranquil sounds of the smaller birds had jolted her from her slumber. It was strange, hearing so much chirping and singing. They hadn't seen many birds the day before, yet this morning there was a cacophony. False dawn lit the sky in the east over the canyon wall. She sat up and tugged her jacket tighter around her. The morning air was chill, and a light dew had settled on the ground as they slept. She looked at the others. They were huddled closely together. She clapped her hand over her mouth as a laugh escaped her lips. When they had laid down in the night, Fram and Jephram were on the end of the lineup, with Jephram lying close to Traylon, followed by Megrith, then Tuara herself. Somehow Fram had worked his way between Megrith and Traylon, and his head was at the wrong end. Traylon had also turned in the night, and she was laying with her legs across Fram and onto Megrith, her head on Jephram's back. Tuara decided she would let the others sleep longer, if they were able, and slipped across the clearing towards the pool of water. She wanted to get an early start, but a short delay would make no real difference, and she wanted a chance to enjoy the exhilaration of the icy water on her bare skin. She made her way to the water's edge and looked back to make sure the others were still slumbering. Finding none of them had so much as stirred, she quietly shed herself of her clothing and waded in. In the cool morning air, the water had much more of a chilling effect. She had to physically stop herself from crying out with a hand over her mouth, as one of her steps forward found a dip in the pool's rocky floor. In one step she went from the water comfortably at mid-thigh to well over her waist. The sudden chill of the water over so much exposed flesh felt like thousands of needles prickling her skin. After the moment of shock subsided, she continued to wade deeper and deeper, then inhaled deeply and immersed herself completely. The cold that enveloped her felt heavenly. She remained submerged until her breath was spent and slowly rose until just her face broke the surface. She felt refreshed and ready to face whatever this new day would bring. She lifted her head and looked to where the youth slept. With her alban eyes, she could not see in the dark, strictly speaking, but even the faint light from the stars high overhead was enough for her to make out the tangle of bodies in the midst of the clearing. Good. None of them had stirred. She was about to leave the pool when movement near the clearing entrance caught her eye. Had she made a mistake counting the sleeping youths? She glanced back and could make out enough to see the four shapes still modeled together. Her eyes shot back toward the entrance. Slowly, from the dark shadow of the high rock, a form emerged. Man or woman, she could not tell, but it moved slowly and deliberately, any sound of its movement buried beneath the chattering of birds and the music of the miniature waterfall. As the form approached the sleeping youths, Tuara's breath caught, the meager light reflected off a long, gleaming blade. Tuara waded forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She struggled to keep her breathing under control. With only her head above the water, she moved forward until her hands touched the rocky bottom of the pool. She felt around quickly, until she had a large stone in each hand. She looked back at the youths. The figure had made a circuitous route around the fire pit and was nearly to the pile of her sleeping friends. She inched herself forward, pacing her movements with those of the intruder, and offered a silent prayer to any gods listening, that the babbling of the spring into the pool would be enough to cover any sound she made. As her foot settled gently on the grass, the figure reached the tangle of bodies. It appeared to pause, as if evaluating. She couldn't wait. Any hesitation could mean possible death for one of her friends. She took one final breath, then sprinted forward, closing the distance in quick strides. Her feet made a swishing sound on the grass, and the crouching figure turned to look in her direction. She didn't hesitate. She let out an anxious, petrified squeal and slammed one of the rocks into the face that had turned toward her. There was a wet, crunching sound, like that of a large insect being crushed, and a deep guttural grunt came from the figure as it fell in a heap. Her momentum carried her forward, and she tripped, sprawling in the dew-covered grass. "Wake up! Hurry! Everyone get up!" she yelled frantically as she scrambled to her knees. "Meg, Traylon, Fred!" She cut off with something large and heavy slammed into her from behind. She went down hard, her face smacked into the ground under the thick grass. She grunted and moaned and tried to raise her head, but a weight pressed on her back. A strong hand held a fist of her hair and continued to push her face hard into the ground. "Not so fast, princess," whispered a hoarse voice close to her ear. "We was meant to do this different like. But seeing as how you done ruined things right well, I figured to finish the job off right here and now." She felt a pinprick of pain a few inches below her left armpit. Desperate, despite pain in her jaw and the feeling of being suffocated, she froze at the sensation. The hoarse voice chuckled near her ear, and the pressure on her side increased. "You can't be no accolade, if you're dead." The pain grew slowly, and she felt warmth leaking from her side into the grass. Whoever it was, he meant to kill her slowly. He shoved the blade steadily into her side. She tried to thrash, tried to push herself up, but he was too heavy. All at once her attacker jerked and the blade sprang away from her side. Then the weight on her back and head was gone, and her head was yanked to the side by the hair. She scrambled to her feet, rushing forward and spinning, ready to defend herself as best she could. She had lost the stones that had been in her hands, but she was alive yet and could still put up a fight. She crouched in a fighter's stance and took in the scene. 2 men lay in the grass, one twisted awkwardly on his side, a dark wetness where his face should be. The other sprawled on his back, the handle of a dagger protruding from the side of his neck. Traylon stood over the second man, her hands shaking as she looked at Tawara with large, round eyes. "What is this, Tawara? Who are they?" Traylon said, her voice shaky with panic. "I do not know," Tawara replied, rushing forward to seize Traylon in an embrace. "Thank you," she said breathlessly, pulling back to look at the other woman's still frightened eyes. Traylon swallowed hard, and her mouth moved soundlessly for a moment. "What do we do now?" she finally managed. "I think the one I stabbed is dead. Should we make sure the other one's dead too?" Her voice sounded thick, and she suddenly turned and vomited on the legs of the man whom she had stabbed. Tawara grabbed her arm, but Traylon waved her away and straightened, wiping the back of her hand across her mouth. "I'm okay," she said, and took a deep breath before spitting into the grass. "Traylon," Tawara said, and glanced furtively around the now ruined oasis. "We must get the others up and moving. There could be more of them." Traylon's body tensed. She looked frightened. She looked like a frightened rabbit, ready to spring away from a predator. "We think there's more. Oh, gods, Tawara, I just got lucky with that one. He didn't see me when I woke up, and we ain't got no real weapons." "I know," Tawara said, pulling Traylon to get her moving. "Get the others up. I need to put some clothes on, and we must saddle the horses and flee as quickly as possible." Traylon looked down and seemed to realize for the first time that Tawara was completely naked. She let out a single nervous bark of a laugh, then paused with a hand on Tawara's shoulder. "You're hurt," she stammered, pulling at the sashes that wrapped her waist. "There is no time, Traylon," Tawara began, but Traylon was already wrapping the red sash with a Trekkin band around Tawara's middle. "It don't look too deep," Traylon said haltingly, "but I ain't no healer." Tawara looked at the wound, a finger-width gash that had just begun to sting. It slowly seeped dark blood down her ribs. She felt a deeper throbbing pain and hoped that Traylon was correct. "It will have to do," Tawara said reassuringly, as she let Traylon cinch the sash in place. "Wake the others. I will be all right," she said, and hoped it was true. Traylon leaped over to the other youths and began shaking them roughly awake, while Tawara ran to where the pile of clothing lay. She dressed quickly, throwing things into place, not pausing to tuck or straighten. Her jaw hurt, and she kept spitting pieces of grass and dirt mixed with blood onto the ground as she dressed. Her shirt clung to her side where blood had seeped through the makeshift bandage. She threw her jacket in place, buttoning it up in hopes that it might provide a little added pressure to the dressing. It was the best she could do. She would have to deal with it later. For now, they needed to escape. Before her second boot was fully laced, she was already moving toward the horses, where the youths were scrambling to get saddles and tack in place. The sight of 2 men lying dead and bloodied in the grass had woken them quickly. Jeffrem followed Traylin's example and vomited at the sight of the men and the excitement of having to flee, possibly for his life. He was in mid-run, and a large patch of vomit clung to the right side of his shirt. Megrith, too, had had an accident. Waking to panic, she had wet herself, and tried to hold back tears as she fumbled with the cinch for her saddle. Graham was the only one who seemed calm. His movements were quick but deliberate. His eyes continually flashed in all directions. He paused several times in the process to step over to Megrith and calmly assist her. "Let's straighten that saddle, Meg. We need it to sit straight, or it'll come off when we ride." His gentle words reassured her. Twara gathered up what foodstuffs they had left over from the night before. Graham's horse was the only one with saddlebags, and she stuffed as much as she could into them. The rest she dropped in a heap and moved to where Traylin and Jeffrem were preparing to leave. Traylin thrust Cloud's reins into Twara's hands. "Here," she said, quickly wiping blood from the dagger she had retrieved from the second assailant's neck. "You take him. Me and Jeffrem already decided. If more of 'em come, you're most likely to be able to get out of here alive. Realmus can carry Jeffrey and me easy enough." Traylin didn't wait for a reply. She rushed over to Realmus and scrambled up behind Jeffrem. Graham helped Megrith onto her horse before flying into his own saddle. Twara leaped onto Cloud and turned him toward the rock entrance. "We need to move quickly," she said. "Ride close together, but not so close that we will trip each other up. Remember, we do not know the trail ahead. I can only hope we will find a way up and out of the canyon before any more of them come, if there are any." The sky had just begun to lighten overhead. The first rays of the sun were peeking over the high canyon wall. She glanced one more time at the men in the grass. Her breath caught, and the others turned to look. They each gasped in turn. The men wore brightly colored garb, and the multicolored sashes around their waists were clearly visible in the early morning light. Her mind flashed back to the two men in the Trekkin camp. She recognized the face of the tall Brundian who had stared so intently at her as he left. If only she had kept her promise and stayed in the market, perhaps none of this would have happened. "Forget about them," she said to the youths, making eye contact with each of them, willing them to be brave. "We do not know what they wanted. All we know is that we must go." With that, she walked Cloud through the entrance cautiously. When she saw no one there waiting for them, she urged him forward and led the group back onto the trail at a quick trot. She hoped there would be no more threats. They rode as quickly as the train would allow. Every sound in the canyon seemed to come from an unseen menace, and fearful eyes constantly searched the surroundings, looking for danger to show its face again. After nearly 2 hours of relentless travel, all of them were sweating and showing signs of fatigue. The horses' sides were slick and lathered. The wound in Twara's side throbbed. At least the bleeding had stopped, but the dull thrumming ache made the jostling ride that much more uncomfortable. As one, they drew rein, stopping in the middle of a low dip in the trail, as an unnatural sound reverberated through the canyon. "Shh! Do you hear that?" Megrith asked in a hushed tone. "It sounds like a trumpet. Who would be blowing in a trumpet in the middle of nowhere?" The sound came again, echoing through the canyon, seeming to come from every direction. Twara closed her eyes and pushed aside the gnawing panic that persisted in the back of her mind. She let the sounds of the world settle around her, the slight rustling of the gentle breeze passing through the scrub, the distant cawing of a crow, the breathing of the horses and the crunch of their hooves on the rocky trail as they shuffled in the stillness. They were all vivid in her mind. The trumpeting came again, and her sensitive elven ears gave her a direction. "This way," she said, and pointed slightly north of the trail in the direction they were traveling. "The scrub is too thick here. We will have to move down the trail to see anything. Move quietly and keep your eyes open. It may be more of them, or there is someone else in the canyon. They may be able to help lead us out." There were no objections, and Twara nudged past Fram, leading the way down the trail cautiously. The trumpeting continued, sounding in steady intervals every few minutes. She wasn't sure, but she thought she recognized the call, something she had heard during her visits to the garrison back at the manor. She hoped she was correct in her recollections. It would mean that help was assured and close. She tamped down the sense of relief and near elation, refusing to get her hopes too high. They had been riding for nearly half an hour when the trail turned up an incline. They suddenly found themselves overlooking a long, narrow meadow, covered in the thick brown grass that mottled the ground under the trees. Twara paused at the top of the rise, turned to the north, and scanned the horizon. The trumpet sounded again from across the valley. "I believe it is the Avalonian Guard," she told the others. "The Avalonian Guard?" Fram asked. "What in the name of all the gods would they be doing out here?" I would guess they are looking for us, Tuara told him. Rather, looking for me. I am sure they were sent out first thing when I did not return home. I do not think villains would announce their presence with trumpets, but we should be cautious. There is always the chance of a trap. If it's the god come to find you, how much trouble do you think we'll be in? Fram asked, fidgeting with his reins. Trouble? Why would we be in any kind of trouble? Fram asked. Think you don't? Magrath interjected forcefully as she scanned the hillock with her spyglass. We all but kidnapped the princess and kept her out for 2 days while their house guard was out looking for her. If you was thinking with your head instead of pining over Traylon, you'd have figured it out. Hush, Meg, Traylon said, shooting a haughty look at Magrath. Just because we like each other, don't mean he isn't thinking right. Shh, keep your voices down. It will be all right, Tuara told them. I will explain everything. No negative consequences will come to any of you. Besides which, we did face an actual threat, and you saved my life. I sure hope you're right, Fram said, his voice filled with apprehension. Do not worry, I will take care of everything, Tuara said. Right now, however, we need to get moving. We will be exposed on the grasslands. I want to make it into the trees and try to spy out who is approaching before we reveal ourselves to them. The four Trekken all nodded in agreement. Tuara turned the white stallion and set a quick pace off the trail into the open fields, headed for the cover of the tree line beyond. Her mind raced, considering the events of the morning. There had been no signs of pursuit, but what if there were others following them? The sounds of the trumpet could stir an unseen enemy to action. She urged Cloud to move faster, just a little faster. The sounding of the trumpet grew progressively louder, keeping up a steady cadence as they rode. The open fields gave Tuara a sense of nakedness. They could see an enemy that might approach, but who knew what eyes were watching them? It took most of an hour to cross the open grasslands and enter the trees in the rolling hills. Tuara could only hope that they would soon be safe. The undergrowth was thin here, giving a clear view to their surroundings. She slowed the group, but kept her gaze continuously watching for any sign of danger. Tuara scanned the area ahead of them. As she turned to direct the youths to dismount and find a place of cover, a lone rider crested a rise to the northeast and was quickly joined by some 20 more. Tuara's heart was in her throat. What if she'd been wrong again? There were too many for her little band to even attempt an escape. The canopy cast deep shadows, cloaking the oncoming riders in twilight as they rode forward toward the intrepid, weary travelers. Dun, dun, dun! Again. So, that's our first. We finally get to see some experience and interaction between Tuara and the youths and the guys who've been watching her. So, hopefully you enjoyed that little thrilling ride, and look forward to next week to see what's going to happen next. Jared, any thoughts on what we just read through?
It was a fun part to write. It was our first action.
Yeah. How many times has that chapter changed, do you think?
It's like all the chapters. They've all changed. Everything changed. You know, it was
it really
it just
we cut a bunch out of that chapter too that didn't really fit in with the action. We cut a bunch of like them traveling and some more conversation and stuff like that. We were like, wait a minute, they're like running for their lives here. They have no idea how to get out of this place, no idea who's coming after them. But then we're like, wait a minute, we need to cut this down and make it more like fast-paced and intense.
And then later we decided we need to make this more specific.
Yes.
To who's after them. You know.
Yeah, because I forgot about that till just now. I thought about it more. There's so many things we've got to change, but yeah, the two guys chasing him. Originally, we had Tuara ride out. She meets the Trekkens. She goes for a ride, goes into the canyon, and then two guys just show up and attack her. Just out of nowhere.
Just randoms.
Yeah. And then
they weren't random, but
yeah,
they weren't They weren't anyone already introduced.
Yeah, we knew nothing about them. Had no background, no information. The only thing we specifically put in was they were wearing Trekkin clothing. They had the Trekkin sashes, and that was it. So it was more like what's going on? Something, and it's still, to this point, reading through the story, we don't know who these men are, what their motivation is, other than...
No, we don't, but we at least tied them into, okay, these are the guys that we're following or before. Whereas when we originally wrote it, it was just, these are some guys.
Yeah. And the specific comments that they made, the one guy made before he got stabbed in the neck.
Yeah. It still surprises me, almost 3 books into writing this, how fluid writing a book is. The process.
Yeah.
It is.
At least from a writer's perspective,
right.
Everything feels really fluid.
Right. That's what I mean. You write, and you write a lot. And then you go back and you go, well, we should change this one thing, but it's at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's a trickle down all the way through the whole book. One little thing in chapter 4.
Yeah.
It may still only be one little thing, but it's got to be there in chapter 34.
Yeah.
Or it may be one little thing in chapter 2 that becomes a big thing in chapter 12.
Yeah.
You never know. It's constantly flowing, and
yeah, and that's one of the fun parts about the creative process, and doing this type of writing is, even though we know the story, we know how it's going to end, but there's still stuff as we're going. We're like, oh, wait, what about this? And we need to do this. I mean, so last week we had Adam and Jackie that were visiting, with us, and our discussion with them, even after the fact, we were talking about it a little bit, that, hey, we just kind of came up with some new stuff right now while we're talking with Adam and Jackie and just going through. So they wanted to know, like, okay, they wanted to, well, Jackie just said, she's like, I'm all about the spoilers. So they were like, okay, well, how's this going to go? And then they've already read at least the old version of book 2.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to know, okay, what's changing in book 2 to align with book 1? And they haven't read the new version of book 1, so they wanted us to kind of talk through that a little bit. But then from there, we got into a lot of details of, all right, here's what's going to, we went through and we talked for several hours.
Yeah, we spent 4 hours.
I think 4 hours reviewing stuff. And after the 4 hours, we said, that's book 1, books 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Like that's not even the next, what's going to happen next. So we touched on the future stuff a little bit and said, well, here's how it's going to end, and here's some things that are going to be introduced. And then, of course, Adam is really big on, well, why is it that way? Well, what's the background? What's the history? Give me all the details of all this stuff. So we're like, well, if you go back 10,000 years, this happened. And then if you go back 15,000 years, this happened. So, but some of it, there's, it was a little bit daunting in my opinion, having that conversation, because I'm like, wow, there's so much more we still have to write. So much more.
Yeah,
to get this down.
There is. Sorry about that. We've been informed by our sound guy. We kick the table too much.
We make noises.
But,
we shuffle the can. We bump things and shuffle them. But hey,
we're learning.
we're learning. It'll get better. Our quality will hopefully improve over time, but hey, we started. We're doing it. So, yeah, we hope you enjoyed that chapter. Again, if you haven't got the book yet, go get it. It's available on, get it on Kindle or buy the paperback off of Amazon. We wanted to shift a little bit today to talk about, we went to, for those on audio, you can't see me bending over and reaching. We went to Tremendicon. Can you see that, Jared?
Yep.
Alrighty. So we went to Tremendicon, and we were able to go and set up a table there, put our books on display, show our map, talk to people about this podcast and invite them to listen to it. And it's the first con I've ever been to.
Yeah, it was my first con too. It's not a big con. It's a local creators con is what it is.
Yeah.
Basically a networking con.
Yeah. I mean, there were quite a few people there, but yeah, it wasn't a ginormous event. It was over at the Oasis in Springfield, so people that are in Springfield might know what the Oasis is. They have a convention center there. So we had the con there. I got to, it's the first con I've ever attended, period. Not just gone as a vendor. It's the first con of any kind I've ever been to. So experiencing live cosplay stuff. I've seen lots of videos of cool cosplay stuff that people have done. And, some people traveled down there were some people there from St. Louis, some people from Kansas City, some people in different parts of Oklahoma and whatnot. But I would say everybody was within 3 hours. I don't think.
Pretty much, yeah.
I don't know of anybody that traveled further than 3 hours to come to the con. Any of the people we talked to.
Yeah, I know.
And we talked to a buttload of people. So, yeah, it was a cool event. Really, like Jared said, it was kind of a networking con, at least from our perspective. We sold some books and traded some books and etc. We talked to people about reviewing, but we really went around and met a lot of different people, a lot of different creators. We ended up they had different sections, there was a gaming section and then a paint set, people who did, not paint, but they do leather work and armor and stuff like that and cosplays type stuff. And then a whole section of people that were artists or authors and had their books up for sale. And then there was a section, it was called Artist Alley. And because of when we registered, we ended up being down Artist Alley, which had its pros and cons. The cons were we were kind of away from all the other authors who had books available and whatnot. And so we didn't get to mingle as much with authors. The pro was down Artist Alley. I think we were the only books out. Well,
there was two of us.
There was two of us. We were kind of down in the middle, and another author whom we know, Xavier Kane, he was down at the other end. So there were two of us, but our location, we were engulfed by
artists.
Artists. So it let us stand out just a little bit. People would come by and see our map and our books, and we have paintings on one side of us and comic books on the other side of us, and then people selling mugs and decals and stickers and all this stuff, and then right in the middle is us with a big display of our map and our book and a sign that says, "Hey, we want to give away an iPad and whatnot." So a little bit of an eye catcher there.
Yeah, and it was nice. You said we shared a table with a local comic book artist, Josh
Meter.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Does great work. We're gonna have him linked in along with a lot of other people.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to put on this episode. We'll mention that right now. So on this episode, at least on YouTube, we'll have to look at the other locations, but we want to put links on YouTube too. to the different artists that we went around and talked with, anybody who has links that are out there. So they're local artists, they're people that they do art, comic books. We talked to different artists and authors and game developers, other podcasters, a lot of wide variety of people that, it was really kind of neat to walk around and be like, oh, all these people that are here do all this creative stuff right here in our community. And, we are the Creators Guild, so it was a good chance for us to go around and meet a lot of local creators that we could network with and potentially reach out to at some point and say, hey, why don't you come and tell us what you do, and talk to anybody who might be listening to us and who are following our podcast. Come and tell them what you do. So there are a few that we kind of wanted to talk about. One is we met an airbrush artist at Fantasy Realms Art, and he's actually for the giveaway.
What's his name? I can't remember his name.
It's Patrick Rasmussen. So Patrick Rasmussen does airbrush. Fantasy Realm or fantasyrealms.com is his website. If you go on there, he's got some really cool art.
That's Fantasy PH.
Yes, fantasy with a PH.
Yeah.
Kind of like fat with a,
Yeah. Excellent. Very talented.
Yes. The stuff that he did, it was really cool. We just went over and talked to him, and we were talking to him about the podcast and what we wanted to do. And we ended up getting this 2 sets of these prints from him. That one is all the prints from Tombstone. And I'm a big Tombstone fan. I just always have been. It's got Doc Holliday. It's got the Earp brothers. Scene with when the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday are walking to the OK Corral. It's kind of got that scene. And then another one is just Doc Holliday, when he's under the tree and it's like, I'm your Huckleberry. And then one with just Wyatt. Some really cool and excellently done. See, like, they're black and white with just some hints of color to them, and you're like, these are really cool. And then we got another set that's all from Star Wars, and just amazing airbrush work.
Yeah, there's
the different characters.
General Grievous, Darth Maul, Boba Fett, and Samurai Vader. Yeah,
it's like the Samurai Vader. I'm trying to remember. It's like a fan fiction version of Vader.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool. But you can go to fantasyrealms.com. You can see all the different prints that are there. Somebody will have another episode in the future where our winner will be announced, and we'll do a little thing with each of the winners. But go check out Fantasy Realms and Patrick Rasmussen's airbrush arts. Pretty cool stuff. And then we had a good discussion. We had several discussions with the folks from Atomic Broadcasting. Soon as we mentioned podcast, it's like we kept going back and forth, table to table, having little chats with them. And okay, well, I got to go over here and do this, but we're going to come back and talk again. They are, if you look up The Written and the Lost, if you're into role-playing games, if you like role-playing combat, kind of D&D style stuff, they have a GM, and every episode is the adventurers going on an adventure. But if you look up Atomic Broadcasting, like, you can get connected with them and potentially even go play a role with them, go join their team and be on their broadcast and participate in what they're doing. They've got. I've listened to some of their stuff so far, and they do a good job. They do, it's everybody has their own character. They do their own voices, have their own personalities, stuff on there. So it's kind of a dramatization a bit, but the GM, tells the story and everybody acts out what they're doing. So it was cool visiting, talking with them. They kept coming over and yeah, we gotta do some cross development here, between our podcasts. So, and then the other author that was on Artist Row with us is Xavier Kane. I had no idea till we got there that Xavier was even going to be there, but Xavier is actually in the Springfield Writers Guild with us.
Yeah,
so,
I had never met him
in person.
He's great. Yeah, we've done some Zoom meetings with him. Great guy. Really like him.
Yeah.
I haven't read any of his stuff yet.
I haven't had a chance to yet.
Dark fantasy and horror.
Yeah.
But very knowledgeable.
Yes. We have to. Do you want to tell about our experience with Xavier, Jared?
No, I'll let you.
So they have different at the cons. They have different, like every hour to hour and a half, there'll be something else going on. They'll be like, come learn how to do cosplay. Come learn how to do X, Y, or Z, how to do writing, how to publish your books, how to build a website, how to do whatever. And then they have little events. They'll have board game challenges. They had like a whole big thing of Magic the Gathering where they're playing cards, playing games together and stuff, and have a big tournament and whatnot. Well, one of the events was a Star Wars trivia.
Yeah, it was a team's trivia.
Yeah. So Xavier came down and he's like, hey, are you guys going to the Star Wars trivia? And I was like, wow, I had not planned on that. He's like, well, in some of the Zoom meetings, I've heard you guys talk about Star Wars. And I'm going to go to the Star Wars trivia, but I'm going to be on a team by myself. Like, so, how do you guys feel about doing Star Wars trivia? And I've never participated in, like, specific Star Wars trivia, but I know with, like, you can get some of the trivia things that I've seen just generically, like YouTube videos and whatnot, where people are talking about stuff. It's like, I've watched all these episodes 12 times with the director's commentary on, and I've read all the things and everything, and people get really deep into it, and I'm like, I really like the stuff, but I don't get that deep in. I never have.
No, well, maybe more than you, but I'm not that deep into it either.
Well, the funny thing is, so we told Xavier, we're like, okay, but we're not going to help very much. So we ended up getting there. We walked into the trivia, and we were about 10 minutes after the start.
Yeah, we missed the first round.
Yeah, they were just getting ready to start the second round when we got there. And they were like, yeah, go ahead. You can join us. We'll just, you'll just miss the first round. But all the points are cumulative. So they did 5 rounds, and a bunch of the rounds were 10-point rounds. And then they had like a 30-point round and a 20-point round, something like that.
Something like that.
And so we were like, well, that's okay. We'll just go in there and have fun.
Yeah, it was for fun. We weren't,
Yeah. I mean, there's always a little bit of, well, it's trivia, so if we just suck ridiculously, then maybe it's going to be less fun. But
we didn't suck.
We did not suck. We ended up, and granted, I have to say, Xavier did most of the heavy lifting and kind of carried us. So props to Xavier. But we helped. We contributed. We got some of those deeper lore questions.
Yeah, we all knew. All 3 of us knew the main stuff.
Yeah.
Xavier knew a few things that we didn't quite know.
Yeah.
But I pulled a few things out that you guys didn't know, and
yeah. One of the questions was, who is this and what does she play? And I'm like, none of us could remember Rosario Dawson.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, afterward, as soon as we turned it in, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was her name. We couldn't remember. And it was the one 30-point thing. It was the only one we missed. We got 29 out of 30 because none of us could remember Rosario Dawson.
Yep.
But having missed the first round, we still, the team that came in first place got 66 points total, and we got 62 points. We're like, hey, for missing the whole, and the team that won on a couple of the rounds, you got 3 bonus points if you were the first one to turn your sheet in with all the answers. And that lady sitting across from us, really short, but her little short legs, every time I tried sprinting, but we were at the back of the room, and I'm like, her fast little short legs. But like I said, dwarves are wasted at cross country. They're natural sprinters. And she beat me to it. So her team ended up winning, but they won the extra 3 points 3 times.
Yeah.
So from a trivia perspective, we blew everybody out of the water. So we got, for people who can't see, we got this little BB-90. Can you see that on there? Little pop toy.
Hey,
That was our second place prize.
that's pretty cool.
I know. Pretty cool to win second place in trivia for Star Wars. So, we are the biggest nerds. I guess that's what we're saying. Even though we didn't win first place, it was pretty definitive. We were the biggest nerds in the room.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, go check out Xavier Kane. It's Xavier Kane, Kane with a K, XavierKane.com. He actually has a podcast as well that you can go listen to. He does a series. The series is Fear from the Heartland, and it's like a horror short story series, or an episodic story that he continues and tells the stories of Fear from the Heartland on his podcast. So go check his stuff out. And then sitting next to us, of course, we said Josh Meter. You can look up Josh Meter Art. He does some comic book stuff.
He's also on, where's his card?
It's down over.
It's on the back of his card. Is the site that his art is on.
I didn't.
Available for free.
Yeah, you can go. Well, if you look up Josh Meter, MEADOR, Josh_Meter_art. If you look that up, you can find him, and you can find his comic books. And his comic books are online. You can read a bunch of his stuff for free.
Right, and that's his as well as other local artists.
Just Meter Comics. No. Clever Jaku.
Yeah.
CleverKaiju. Clever Kaiju. I said that wrong.
Yes.
CleverKaiju.com. So yeah, you can go there and you can see his cool. I mean, sitting next to him, he did 3 or 4 commissions for people sitting right there at the table next to us.
Yeah, and it was amazing. He just
it's not wimpy amateur stuff.
And it's out of nowhere.
Yeah. In fact, we were just kind of joking around with him, shooting the breeze a little bit, and I don't even remember how it came to it. And I was like,
oh, the Winnie the Pooh, and
yeah, we were talking about copyrights and stuff, and then I was like, hey, Winnie the Pooh and Mickey Mouse are both in public domain now. You should do a battle between Winnie the Pooh and Mickey Mouse.
And he did.
So he did.
He gave it to us.
Yeah.
And then we kind of gave it back.
Well, he gave it to us, and then he had to leave. So we're like, well, we're gonna sit this on his table with his card so people can still see it.
Right.
And we left it there. And we're like, well, it'll still be here tomorrow. But then when we came in the next day, somebody came up and bought it.
Yep.
So I was like, I'm glad it sold.
Yeah, but
I was like,
it would have been cool to have the show here.
Yeah, we can't hold it up and show it to you because Josh sold it.
But yeah,
But yeah, just sitting there.
great art.
Yes, very good art. And then on the other side of us was Grace Haas. I think that's Haas or Hay. I can't. Haase. But I don't remember how you pronounce it. But By Grack is her stuff.
That's what, yeah.
And you can look her up on Instagram. So it's instagram.com/Bygrak, and it's BYGRAK. And like she kept explaining to people that would come up, like there was a big board, like it was almost right in front of my face because we were technically only had one chair, but we snuck another chair in. So I was kind of sitting behind one of her art things, and she'd be like, "This art is distraction." And I'm like, "Yes, it's very." It was really good art. It was all, her painting stuff, and it was like a collage of like 1,000 tiny little pictures that all meshed and morphed together. And it was as though you're like, well, I'm going to paint this tiny little picture. Squirrel, another squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. I mean, they weren't all squirrels, but just squirrel, 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 until the whole canvas is filled.
Yeah, it was a large canvas. It was like 36-inch canvas.
Yeah, it was a big canvas. And I'm like, that's a lot of distraction.
But it was very good. It was like, yes, you look at it, that is what being distracted is like.
Yes, exactly. It's really good art, really cool stuff. And of course, completely different genres. Comic books on one side of us. The other one, what it made me think of, just my impression of a lot of her art, is I'm like, it feels like Adventure Time just plays in your head all the time.
Yeah.
So, she does some cool stuff. I even told her, I'm like, you should take all your characters and why not do a cartoon? You could totally do, because Adventure Time, I could describe Adventure Time as like a never-ending ADHD show. Like each episode this is a depiction of distraction and illusion and being, pulled in different directions. So, yeah, she had some really cool art. And like I said, multiple canvases there, and had a bunch of stickers and stuff. So you can go check her out.
Prints.
Yeah, a lot of prints. So you can check her out on Instagram. Again, it's Bygrak, and that's Grace Hayes. However you say it, Haase. Go check her out on Instagram. I don't know. And then we met a couple different game groups. One of them we met was Foretold. And if you go check them out on Facebook, Foretold Creations, all one word, they do like all new games. So like during the gaming event, they had a new game, and it was, I don't know, the board would have been like 3 feet by 3 feet. And it looked like if you took all the hexagons from Settlers of Catan and made this big game board like that with different hexagons, and then you have different miniatures and pieces and cards and stuff that you got to play through, and it's like a mixture of a tabletop board game with a role-playing game, and it's something they came up with.
Yeah, it's basically an RPG, or not RPG. Yeah, RPG.
Yeah.
My brain, I thought MMORPG for a second. I was like, wait, no.
It's not a rocket-propelled grenade.
Yeah.
A role-playing game.
That you don't need a GM for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like we have Zombicide. Zombicide, whatever. We played that one. Played that one with Jared and I. Played that. We played it with his son and with my kids, and but it's different from that. It's not like just playing a game of Zombicide, but it's its own take on like the layout of land and how you set it up and whatnot. So you can go check them out, Foretold Creations. And then we met the Planescape guy. And the Planescape guy, they get into like deep role-playing stuff.
Very, very detailed, very meticulous.
Yes.
Very, very detail-driven.
Yes. very lore, backstory, history, the whys, the hows, the ins and outs, which is great because if you can go on YouTube and you can look up, I want to be a GM, all one word, but it's I want to be a GM. And they actually have classes that you can go in, and they will teach you how to be an effective game master, how to learn like tips and tricks and how to come up with stories and how to manage players and how to engage with players. And I'm like, yeah, they're
Yeah, and well, what's nice about that for us, we got some of their literature, because in order to be a good game master, you have to be a world builder.
mm-hmm.
And as a writer, we have to be good world builders.
At least for our world, we have to be good world builders.
Right. And so a lot of and also character development and
Yes.
and character interaction and all those things that make a good game also make a good fantasy book.
Yeah.
So
And it works for us, like the literature works for us and aligns well with gaming, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that will not end up being in the book directly. But we've come up with politics and why things are the way they are, and structure hierarchies in the different realms, and why those structures exist the way that they do, and the backstory of how they came into being, and just all this backstory and characters. What's their family history? Where did they came from? Why do they do that? Blah 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 blah. Just on and on. All these things, that a whole bunch of it. We know realistically it's not going to all be in the book.
well, it's not practical.
Yes, it's not practical.
People don't want. I mean, people want.
Some people want that.
People want the
I'm
information.
looking at me, Adam.
Yeah, they want the information, but not necessarily all in the novel.
Yeah.
That's why we'll probably have companion books.
Yeah. So they came. I mean, we spent, I don't know, a couple hours in total.
Yeah, at least.
Probably at least 2.5 hours, just discussing, where Troy is the guy, the Planescape guy, and just like, well, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? What about this in your world? Oh, you have these different realms. Well, what about other continent? We're like, well, that's where these people come in, and that's where these people come in, and that's it. And you could see his eyes like lighting up, like, oh. And then he started saying, we should work together. We should turn this into a game. We could take, we got to figure out how to make adventures out of it, and then how to branch out into other worlds and other continents in your realm, and then go back into that backstory and have adventures there and all the stuff. And we're like, that sounds great.
We have to write a book.
We have to write books. So he was really excited, and it was exciting to talk to him and feel his excitement. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was it was fun meeting and talking with that group of people and talking about the potential of where our world and our books could end up going long term, post book completion, or maybe not post, maybe things work out and they're like, all right, we want to start having some D&D type, some RPGs based on your world, and if things work out well, maybe we help coordinate with them. But it was some cool stuff. And then there's one author there in particular that I spent a good deal of time visiting with, and that was Timothy McGowan. I don't know if you went over and talked with. Yeah, you came over, the Lit RPG guy. You came over and talked with him a little bit.
Just for a few minutes, yeah.
But the cool thing talking with him is seeing his success. And that's where I was like, you're doing what I want to do. Because he worked in computer science and then got successful enough with his books. Just he wrote them for fun, and to want to write something, and it just hit right at the right time. hit the right market, and then he went to his wife and was like, hey, this is a real thing. This isn't a side gig. This is a real thing. So for a little over 3 years now, he quit his job. He's just been writing books, and he has a plethora of books that he had out on that table. He had a lot of, he's very prolific at his writing, and so I'm a big audiobook person just because of time. I wish I had time. I think we talked about it a little last time with Adam and Jackie. I'd love to sit down and read, but I don't have the time to sit down and read. So I listen a lot while I'm driving. So I've been listening to his books, and I really like them so far. The Arcane Knight series is what I'm listening to right now. And you should definitely go check it out. It's his email or his website. It's author Timothy McGowan, McGowen, author TimothyMcGowan.com. And go check out his work. If you're into lit RPG, it's been fun so far. I haven't finished the Arcane Knight series yet. I'm about halfway through, at least the books that I have, about halfway through them so far. And I'm enjoying them so far. I'd be listening and driving right now if we weren't doing this podcast. So go check out his stuff as well. And we're looking forward to this fall. We're going to go to, what is it? Tremendicon was here. ExtremeCon. Yep, we're going to go to...
If we register.
If we get registered, we're going to go to ExtremeCon, which is up by Fort Leonard Wood, St. Roberts area. They have, it's going to be, from what I'm seeing, it's similar to Tremendicon. It's a little more cosplay focused even.
Yeah. So, that's one of their main things, cosplay on that one. But,
there's a lot. I've got a little package. I put everything in here, all the cards and everything that we collected. What was I'm trying to think. I don't have it in here. I was looking for it. The writers group, self-publishing group that all works together and edits together. And
was it
Wraith? Yeah, Word Wraith. Yeah, Word Wraith books. If you want to support indie authors that I haven't read any of the books from any of the authors from Word Wraith yet.
I haven't either, but the Space Ass looked pretty good. I was going to buy it there at the con, but I was running a little shy on cash. It's a space opera comedy, right? Yeah.
And
with the donkey.
Yeah. And it's literally Space Ass. It's about I don't know what it's about. A space donkey?
Yeah, I have no idea what it's about, but I'm definitely going to look into
it. Word Wraith, they're a group of authors that support each other and work together to help each other get their books out. And it's not really... There is a company or an LLC there that kind of helps manage everything, but it's just a group of authors that work together, coordinate with each other, help each other find editors and get their work to be really good, and then they release it. We made a lot of good contacts, met a lot of people. There's a bunch of other people that we haven't talked about, but we only have so much time. So we'll put a lot of links in the descriptions, and you can go to Tremendicon.com and see almost everybody that was there. Some people didn't quite get their information set up, but you can go to their site and see all the different artists and creators that were there, which is really cool because you can go check out local people who live, within 3 hours of us. I'm sure, every community, there's going to be creators. So that's the other thing. No matter where you're at, go look within your community and see what you can find from a creative perspective. You might be surprised. I was kind of surprised by just the sheer volume of people who create really good art or really good art, games, music, books, literature, stories, comic books. There's a whole gambit. People that do work in leather work and jewelry and metalworking. There's a lot of really cool stuff out there. So go check in your community, find those creative people, and support those creative people in your community. Go check out some of the people that we found and connected with at Tremendicon. And if you feel inspired or have a desire to be creative, just start. That's one of the things that we hope that we want to, as we go through, this podcast evolves into whatever it's going to evolve into. Hopefully you feel some encouragement along the way. And at some point, if you have a desire to create something and to do something, to try something new, just go start. That's where we're at. We just started. And then now we just have to be consistent. And hopefully, we'll see what it turns into. But no matter what happens, I can say I have a published book. And hopefully by the end of this year, be like, I have 2 published books and then 3 published books. Nothing gets in the way and I'm able to keep going with that. But no matter what, Jared and I, we can say we wrote a book.
We did it.
We created a podcast and are trying to encourage other people to go write their book, do their paintings, get in, start forging something. Go do something cool that's fun and enjoyable and cool to you. And be creative. Thanks for joining us this time. Till next time, go in good spirits. Thanks for listening to the Creators Guild podcast. Don't forget to get your copy of A Flight from Shadows, available on Amazon. While you're there, please rate it and give it a review. If you like the Creators Guild, please like and subscribe, and make sure to share it with your friends. Until next time, go in good spirits.